Welcome to episode 3 of New Style Voices. This is Laura Volpentesta of Fashion Illustration Tribe. We're here to discuss learning, creativity, expression, communication, community. This is a place to get you fired up about learning, making, sharing, and growing in your creative arts and expression. That expression could be business, could be family, could be fashion design, could be jazz. All of those are part of my own experience, and that's where I hope to overlap with you. So today what I want to talk to you about is age. Or maybe not age, maybe it's about diversity as a value. It's funny. I know a lot of you are maybe entrepreneurs. Any of us as artists, to a certain level, are entrepreneurs. If you get deep into the online marketing study, the first thing you come up with again and again and again is, defining your ideal customer avatar. How old is she or he? Where does he live? What's his lifestyle? How much do they make? How many kids do they have? What kind of a house do they live in? All these specifics. And I hear that again and again. What's your age demographic? I was listening to lead marketers interviewing each other the other day, and that topic came up again and again and again. And it's a great question. It's a great topic. There are different interests that target different people in different places. Demographics are great. But in some things, and definitely in my business, the defining part of my demographic is that there isn't, let's say, an age demographic. So what I want to talk about today is the mixing of ages and the value of the mixing of ages. Maybe it's not for everything. Maybe it's not for everywhere. But I want to talk about how it benefits everyone's experience, and maybe some reasons why we shy away from it in our culture. So let's open this discussion, and more than anything, I can't wait to hear from you below with your thoughts on the subject. Okay, so for me, one thing that leads to the way I look at these things is my experience in a homeschool environment. There were quite a few years I was homeschooling / unschooling my kids in a community of other moms who were doing the same. And this led to a ton of inter-age experiences. And in this case, we're talking about the kids as well as the caretakers, because there were grandmas, fathers, you had teenage siblings, little kids, all together, mixing and mingling. And this is so rich. This is one of the experiences that really made me feel strongly about the mixing of ages being of value in my perspective. Another one of them was similarly when I was teaching music together to caregivers and toddlers. You had, again, grandparents, parents, older siblings, and little siblings all mixing. It wasn't just the kids. It wasn't only kids in a certain age group. It was everybody jumbled together. Gosh, how I love that. And then another one is, okay, so I teach fashion design. And I'm a musician. In all of these settings, we would never restrict our experience to one age group. Why? I mean, even in children where developmental years are, change rapidly, even later in life, someone who's in their childbearing years, someone who's past their childbearing years, someone who's getting into those years, not, whether you have a child or not, just these chapters of life. Why would we necessarily isolate them? There's reasons why we would in some settings, but in other settings, for example, so in let's say a jazz or traditional in any music environment, the older musicians are going to carry memories, history, traditions, stories that they're going to pass down. Down's not really the word, okay? We use traditionally, we use those words, but you're going to pass it sideways to the younger musicians who are teaching the older musicians about new technology. And these are assumptions too, because sometimes it's the older guys teaching the younger guys. I got onto the internet through someone who was twice my age. When the internet was first coming out, and I didn't know anything about it. It was my stepfather who was all hip and savvy. You just never know. But in my fashion classes at the university, usually I'm getting a certain age group. Um, as a In a bachelor degree program, I was getting, everybody was straight out of high school. 99% straight out of high school, 99% female. And what you get then is you get the teacher and you get the kids. They're not kids, but you get that setup that's kind of continuing on from elementary school. But when I started teaching in the associate degree department at Parsons School Design, it was totally different. I was getting more global students. I was getting career changers. I was getting moms, people coming in who had been lawyers, accountants, architects, all kinds of different backgrounds coming into fashion and intersecting. And it just felt so vital and rich because of all that cross pollination and all the experience we were bringing in. Different students, and I felt such a strong sense of the fact that I was an equal with my students. I may not had more specific knowledge in my field, but they had so much specific knowledge from their fields and their backgrounds, and it was really a conversation that was so stimulating. So for me, in my own business, let's say, teaching fashion design online, I don't want to only reach the over 50 crowd. I only want to reach the 18 to 24 crowd. I want a little bit of everything. I want to know that the older students are going to be refreshed and inspired by the perspective of the younger students, and that they're actually going to take on some mentorship roles and guidance. But vice versa, the younger students are going to be revitalizing and refreshing. Wait, did I already? The older students, and vice versa. It's going to go both ways because they're both hanging out in different social, technological spaces and interacting with their worlds in different ways, but that they each have gifts for each other. And deep down, we go into school because we sort of want something. We want to get something. We want to get either an experience or a community or a piece of paper that says we did something. But the other thing that we really want, we really want to give. So when we go into a learning environment, we're giving. We want to offer guidance to the others. We want to inspire. We want to remember that we have something to offer and use those gifts. So the more important thing for me, aside from not age demographic, it's interest demographic. Are you interested in learning in a mixed age group setting? I am. Um, huh. Everyone knows, Brazil is a big part of my experience. Brazilian culture is something that really opened up my life and my world to, I feel, to be lived more fully. And one of the things that had really struck me early on when I was starting to spend time with people from different parts of Brazil was there was a real ease in conversation between me and anyone of any age. And I know that to me that sounds normal anyway, but because it was happening, I was realizing that it doesn't happen so much in my culture. Not the way I felt it there. I could be conversing with someone who was 12 or 80 or anything in between. I was 25 at the time. I still have this experience where I noticed that it's remarkable to me how easy and comfortable and enjoyable the conversation is. And so, I'm like, that's an art form. That's a skill. That's something that's a little bit underdeveloped here in my world. And in my studies around the homeschooling and unschooling, I did see that over time I started to really question the idea of sorting people by age, sorting children by age, putting everyone who's 7 into one room and then putting them into all the same room when they're 8 and then 9, and they're sort of competing, even though developmentally we're not all at the same. There's a real gamut of development. I've experienced it myself with my 3 kids. So I don't think sorting by age is something we should take for granted as the norm or the ideal. I really, really believe in the transferring of wisdom back and forth, not only down from, older to younger, the traditional line, but back and forth, back and forth. I think so many of us notice this now that, like, our own kids are teaching us how to use our technology, things like that. And meanwhile, we can give them the guidance of, social perspective and experience about how they may want to adjust how they're using it, et cetera, et cetera. So I would love to know how you feel about mixing ages. How do you feel about, do you have specific experiences or memories you could share here about how the mixing of ages or the not mixing of ages affected your experience? Another learning environment I'm currently in is a belly dancing class. I can sense something incredible in that class between the oldest to youngest students. It's actually glorious and very bonding, to have the teenage sister, the pregnant first time mom, the menopausal, grandmas, all dancing together, all sharing female experience together in that mixed setting. So John Taylor Gatto is someone I love to read when I'm reading about education and learning, which are some of my key words, how learning happens, especially around arts. And he definitely talks about questioning the traditional formats of how education looks. So I try to say, how could you imagine dreaming up more mixing? For me, I don't want to name a demographic of age for my business. I want to name of values. And the values I would choose are diversity, inclusion. Not for the sake of sameness, inclusion for the sake of everyone being able to share their quote unquote differentness among the community. That everyone's in. It's a tricky one. It's tricky to articulate, but it's powerful in feeling. So that's, even fashion magazines, we're still struggling with what we see in those. How many ages, shapes, sizes, cultures, colors do we see in there? But that's out there. In my business, I can start from the heart, right? Start from my own seed. So diversity is a huge piece of that. I'm in that mood where it's like, wow, I would love to be having this conversation with someone. And I feel like I'm having this conversation with you guys, but I can't hear you speaking back. I look forward to taking it further. And I'm wondering if this feels like a new concept to anybody, or if it just feels like, oh, yeah, you know? And whether do you think that the age segregation is a trend that is going to start coming coming away, or if that's something that we think is going to continue? I do think that when we mix ages, we're stronger because we don't get cut off from the information we need ahead of us, what's to come. It's so important to be able to interact with people who have already walked some of the land that we're about to walk, whether it's in our life what do you call it, like life cycle, or our career path, or our development of our skills. So for example, in the development of your instrument playing, or your technical design, illustration skills, drawing. And then aside from technical, there's the whole soul journey. What's your message? How's that developing? How is your work integrating with your daily life? If you're at the beginning of your career or path, how do you begin to build your life? If we have multi-age interaction, we're going to have so much golden nuggets of information and advice and just shared real stories. Whereas when we don't, we're kind of shooting blind. I like to have that freedom too, but I think it's better, as a choice. I do remember I was always very much interested in anthropology, and I always thought I would be an anthropologist. And I remember in the first anthropology class I ever took, there was a page we hit upon where it was like they were asking that they were defining that there were two kinds of cultures, and there were two words for it, and I can never remember the words. But the definition was that one kind of culture, the individual looked up to the elders to kind of like learn how to live, how to be. And then the other kind of culture, peers looked to their peers. And this was early in my college years, so I think I was like right out of high school, and I was like, oh, wow. Peers looking to their peers is, in some ways, is just wonderful. It's like new generation, new spirit, new vibe. And in some ways, maybe in some of the most like insecure or worried ways, it's like the blind leading the blind. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have anyone to turn to or lean on that's already walked that path at that time. And so you're asking your friends, and they're clueless too. that can be that can have all kinds of results, and it's all good. But I just wanted to bring that up so we could think about mixing ages. And I definitely don't think I'll be changing my business. I believe the age demographic is going to depend on who comes, who my message calls to. But the real demographic of my business is an inside demographic. I'm not sure if it shows up on a chart, or maybe it's, people who are interested in the arts, or maybe it's, and people who are interested in business, people who are interested in learning, maybe not as much as in education. I'm very curious about how learning happens, how quote unquote teaching happens, how learning institutions, it's a scary word for me, how learning environments are structured, and how that serves the learners, because really that's what those structures should exist for, right? And I'd love to know your thoughts. So I hope you'll comment below this video. If there's no comment spaces where you're viewing it, I hope you'll email me info@fashionillustrationtribe.com. That's my website, my business online fashion school for beginners to go deep into model drawing, illustration, design techniques, watercolors, even iPad and Android digital sketching, but all freehand and about tapping in to just your expression, your communication, your creativity, and connecting with others around it. So I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining me for another episode. I'm Laura Volpentesta. Don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned for the next. And if you are interested in fashion, sketching, and illustration, make sure you subscribe at my website as well so that you can stay abreast of upcoming courses and events and get your freebies. Thanks for joining, and I really appreciate having you here. We'll see you next time. Ciao.